You have always been told a black hole is a hole, an absence, a place where things fall in and nothing comes back. Tonight, that picture quietly comes apart. A black hole is not empty. It is the most crowded thing in the universe, matter crushed so tightly that space and time fold around it, and the dark you see is not nothing at all. It is everything, hidden behind a wall of light. Stay with me here on Midnight Science. Like and subscribe so the calm finds you again tomorrow night. Tell me where you are watching from and what hour glows on your clock. Start with the word itself. Black hole. Two small syllables that have done more to shape how you picture this thing than any photograph ever taken, any equation ever written, any telescope ever pointed at the dark. You heard the phrase long before you understood any physics behind it, and by the time the physics arrived, the picture was already set. The word came first. The word did the work. And the word, gently, patiently, quietly, is wrong. Not wrong in a way that anyone lied to you about. Wrong in the way a nickname can be wrong, a name that captures the first impression and misses everything underneath it. Somebody looked up or looked at a page of mathematics and reached for the nearest familiar thing, and the nearest familiar thing was a hole, an absence, a gap in the fabric, a place where something should be, and instead there is nothing. That is the picture the word hands you, fully formed, before you have a chance to ask whether it fits. So let us ask whether it fits. Slowly, we have time. Picture what a hole is, a hole in the ground. You have seen one, stood at the edge of one, maybe dropped a stone into one and waited for the sound of it landing. A hole is defined by what it lacks. The dirt that used to be there is gone, and what remains is the shape of its going. A pocket of nothing carved into something. A hole is absence with edges. That is its whole nature. To make a hole, you remove. To fill a hole, you replace what was removed. The hole is the missing part. Now hold that idea in one hand, because we are going to need it, and it is going to fail us, and the way it fails is the beginning of everything. Think of a drain. The word hole pulls the image of a drain along with it almost automatically. Water spiraling down, faster near the center, vanishing into a pipe you cannot see. Things fall in. Things do not come back. The drain is a place of one-way traffic, a small local doom for anything light enough to be carried. And somewhere at the bottom of it, out of sight, the water goes wherever water goes. When people imagine matter falling into a black hole, this is very often the picture running underneath, a cosmic drain, a place where the universe empties out. It is a good picture. It is vivid, it is easy to hold, and it is built on a foundation that quietly does not exist, because a drain leads somewhere. A drain is a passage, a throat, a route from here to elsewhere. The water that spirals down is not destroyed, it is relocated. It goes into the pipe, into the ground, into the system of pipes that carries it out of your life, and into the wider plumbing of the world. The drain is a door. And the word hole, riding along on the image of the drain, whispers to you that a black hole is a door too, a passage, a route to somewhere else, a tunnel through the floor of reality. Set that whisper aside. There is no floor here, and there is no pipe, and there is no elsewhere that the matter drains into. Whatever a black hole is, it is not a passage out of the universe. It is not a gap in the fabric with something on the other side. That is the first thing the word takes from you, and it takes it so smoothly that you never notice the theft. Let that land for a second. Now, let us try the other picture, the one that lives on the other side of the word. Not the drain, but the void. When people say a black hole is empty, they do not usually mean it is a drain. They mean something starker. They mean it is a pocket of pure nothing, a region scooped clean of all substance, a hole in the sense that space itself has been hollowed out and left bare. In this picture, the black is the color of absolute emptiness. There is nothing there. That is why you cannot see it. You are looking at a piece of the universe with the contents removed, and darkness is simply what nothing looks like. This picture too is vivid. This picture too is easy. And this picture is the one we are going to spend the next long while dismantling, because it is not just slightly wrong, it is precisely, exactly, cleanly backward. Here is the claim, stated flatly, the way we will state the hard things all the way through this. A black hole is not a region where matter has been removed. It is a region where matter has been concentrated past every limit you have ever imagined for concentration. It is not the emptiest place in the universe. It is the fullest. The darkness you see when you look at one is not the darkness of nothing. It is the darkness of too much, packed too tightly, in too small a space, for light to climb back out and reach your eye. Read that again. Because the whole journey lives inside it. The dark is not a symptom of absence. The dark is a symptom of fullness. You have been told in 1,000 small ways that these are opposites, dark and full, empty and heavy, nothing and everything. And here, at the center of the strangest object we know, they turn out to be the same thing wearing two faces. The darkest patch in the sky is dark for the same reason a locked vault is dark inside. Not because it is empty, because it is so full that nothing can get out to tell you what is in there. Sit with that for a moment. It reverses something you did not know you believed. Let me be careful here, because I do not want to trade one wrong picture for another wrong picture and call it progress. When I say a black hole is full, I do not mean it is full the way a room is full of furniture, objects sitting in space, occupying it, arranged within it. I mean something stranger and more total. I mean that the matter has been pressed together so completely that the ordinary rules about how much stuff fits in, how much room stop applying. I mean that space and time themselves are bent around the concentration, folded, steepened, until the geometry of the place is nothing like the flat and patient geometry of the room you are sitting in. We will walk into all of that, slowly, layer by layer. That is the whole purpose of the walk. But I want the destination visible from the very first step, so you know where the patience is taking you. The destination is this. By the end, the darkest thing in the sky is going to look to you like the most crowded thing in the sky. And you are going to understand, not as a slogan but as a felt fact, why those are not two different statements. That is the loop I am planting now. Hold it loosely. We will return to it. For now, let us stay with the word a little longer, because it deserves a fair hearing before we set it down. Black hole is not a foolish name. It is an honest first impression. From the outside, from a great distance, with the instruments of an earlier century, a black hole announces itself almost entirely by what it does to its surroundings, and almost not at all by what it is. You see stars swing around an invisible center. You see gas heat and glow as it falls towards something you cannot resolve. You see light bend near a region that gives back no light of its own. And if all you have is the outside behavior and the missing center, then whole is a reasonable word. A place where the light goes and does not return. A dark round nothing at the heart of all that motion. The name captures the appearance. It just mistakes the appearance for the thing, and that is the oldest error in the history of looking at the sky. The eye reports a surface, the mind supplies a story, and the story, told often enough, hardens into a fact that no one remembers deciding to believe. So this is not a video about correcting a mistake someone made. It is a video about walking behind an appearance until the appearance comes apart in your hands and shows you what it was hiding. That is a slower thing than a correction. A correction is a single sentence. This is going to take a while. That slowness is not padding. The slowness is the method. Some truths cannot be handed to you in a sentence, because a sentence you can nod at and forget. They have to be walked into, one layer at a time, until you arrive somewhere you could not have been told. Let me give you the shape of the walk, so the patience has a map. We are not going to zoom outward tonight. That is the usual direction for a story about the cosmos. Outward, to the scale of galaxies, to the vast and the far, to the humbling immensity of everything. We are going the other way. We are going inward. We are going to take one dark region, one single object, and we are going to move toward it and into its structure, closer and closer, layer by layer, until the word whole has been peeled away entirely, and there is nothing left of it but the sound. This is a journey of compression, not expansion, not the immensity of the universe, the immensity hidden inside one small dark point in it. And at the center of that journey, if you can call the center of a walk like this a place, is the reframe I have already given you and will keep giving you in new registers until it settles. Darkness is not absence. Darkness, here, is the shadow that fullness throws. Now I want to give you the anchor. Every walk needs a thing to hold, something small enough to fit in your attention and simple enough to carry all the way to the end, so that when we return to it, changed, you feel the change in your own hands. Here is ours. The next time you are somewhere the sky is genuinely dark, away from the wash of streetlights, look up and find a patch of black between the stars. Not a star, the space around the stars, the gaps. Pick one dark patch and rest your eyes on it. It looks like nothing. It looks like the plain, empty backdrop that the bright things are pinned to. It looks like the least interesting part of the sky, the part your eye slides across on its way to something worth seeing. Hold that gaze. Hold that patch of apparent nothing, because everything we are about to do is aimed at that patch of black. Not literally at that exact spot, but at what your eye is doing when it looks there and reports nothing. Your eye is a machine for detecting light, and where no light arrives, it tells you empty. It has to. That is all it can do. But empty and no light arriving are not the same statement, and the entire gap between them is where a black hole lives. There are places in the sky, real places, mapped and measured, and now even photographed, where no light arrives at your eye, not because nothing is there, but because everything is there, crushed so tight that its own light cannot escape it to make the journey to you. That patch of black you are holding is our anchor. We will come back to it at the very end. It is the same patch of sky. It will not have changed. You will have changed. And you will look at the dark differently, because you will know, in a way you cannot unknow, that the darkest places are not the emptiest ones. That is the gaze I want you to carry the whole way. The dark patch, the apparent nothing. Hold it. Let me say the reframe one more time in a plainer register, so it settles into the floor of your understanding before we build anything on top of it. When you look at a hole in the ground, the darkness at the bottom is darkness of absence. Nothing is reflecting light back to you because there is little there to reflect it. That is one kind of dark, the honest, ordinary dark of emptiness. But there is a second kind of dark, and we almost never meet it in daily life, and so we have no instinct for it. It is the dark of a thing so dense, so gravitationally steep, that light itself cannot leave it. Not the dark of nothing being there, the dark of everything being there, and none of it able to get out. Two kinds of dark that look identical to the eye and are opposite in their nature. The whole confusion of the word black hole is that it points at the second kind of dark and names it with the first. We are going to spend this walk learning to tell the two darks apart. And once you can tell them apart, you can never fully unsee it, and the night sky becomes a slightly different place, holding at least a few points that are not empty gaps, but sealed rooms, packed to a fullness the eye is simply not equipped to report. I said we would go slowly, and I mean it. So let me tell you honestly what the next layers hold, so the patience knows what it is waiting for, without spoiling the feeling of arriving there. We will go, first, to the matter, to the fullness itself. We will ask what it actually means to say that something is crushed past every limit, and we will try to make that concentration into something your body can feel rather than a number you nod at. That is the layer where the word empty dies for good. Then we will go to the light, to the strange and beautiful fact that the darkest object we know is very often wrapped in some of the brightest light in the entire universe, and that the two are not in tension at all. The black is defined by the fire around it. We will stand in that fire for a while. Then we will go to the boundary, to the edge that everyone calls a surface, and that is not a surface at all, but a threshold, a line drawn in the geometry of space itself, past which the traffic goes only one way. That is where the walk gets quiet and a little lonely, and I will not rush you through it. Then we will go as deep as anyone can go, to the place at the center where our knowledge simply stops, where the map runs out and honest physics puts down its pen. And I will not pretend to you that we know what is there, because we do not, and the not knowing is part of the awe, not a flaw in it. And then we will come back to the patch of black you are holding right now, back to the anchor, And we will look at it again, together, with everything the walk has given us. And it will look different, because you will be different. That is the whole shape. Inward, layer by layer, and then back to the beginning, changed. But all of that is ahead. Right now, at the first step, I only need you to do one thing, and it is a small thing, and it is the seed of the entire journey. I need you to loosen your grip on the word. Just loosen it. You do not have to throw it away. It is a useful word, and we will keep using it, because everyone does, because it is what the thing is called. But when you say it now, or hear it, let there be a small hesitation in you, a quiet asterisk, a private note that says the word is a first impression and not a description, that the whole is not a whole, that the dark might not be what the eye reports. That small hesitation is where understanding begins, not with a new fact poured into you, but with an old certainty gently unlatched, so that there is room for the walk to lead somewhere. So here we are, at the mouth of it, one dark region, waiting, a word that lies to you softly, out of habit, not malice. A patch of black in the sky that you are holding in your gaze, that looks like nothing and is our anchor and will change before we are done. And a claim, planted now, that we will spend everything earning. The darkest thing you can look at is not the emptiest, it is the fullest. And the dark is not the absence of everything, it is the shadow that too much throws. Loosen your grip on the word. Now we begin to go in. We are going in now, and the first layer, the one just beneath the word, is the matter, the fullness itself. So let us begin where all of this begins, which is not in the dark and not in the strange geometry to come, but in something ordinary and enormous and shining, a star. Hold a star in your mind. Our own will do, the sun, the thing that warms your face and runs the days. It is a difficult object to size, because it is so far away that it hangs in the sky as a small bright coin, and the eye reports it as small, the way the eye reports everything wrong tonight. So let us translate, and let us keep the translation, because we are going to build on it all the way down. If the earth were the size of a single grain of sand, a grain you could lose in the creases of your palm, then the sun, at the same scale, would be a ball roughly the width of your hand, not a grain, a fistful. More than 100 earths could line up across its face, and more than 1,000,000 could be packed inside it. That is the ratio. A grain of sand and a fist. Hold both. The grain is the world you live on, all of it, every ocean and mountain and city. The fist is the star, and the fist is not even a large star. It is an ordinary one, a middling yellow star among billions, unremarkable except that it is ours. Now I want you to feel the weight of the fist, because weight is the whole story of what comes next. The sun is not just wide, it is heavy in a way that has no honest comparison in your life. If you gathered every human being who has ever lived, every animal, every mountain range, every ocean, the entire mass of the earth and everything on it, and set it on one side of a scale, the sun would outweigh it, not by a little, but by a factor of more than 300,000. 300,000 Earths on one side, the Sun alone on the other, and the Sun barely moves. That is the mass we are dealing with. That is the fist. Let that land for a second. The grain and the fist. Keep them both. Here is the thing about that fist, that star, that enormous heavy ball of shining matter. It is holding itself up. Every moment of its long life, the star is winning a slow argument against its own weight. At its core, nuclear fire pushes outward, a furnace burning hydrogen into helium, and that outward push exactly balances the crushing inward pull of all that mass trying to fall toward its own center. The star is a truce, a balance held for billions of years between fire pushing out and gravity pulling in. As long as the fire burns, the truce holds, and the star stays a fist, wide and bright and stable. But the fire does not burn forever. The fuel runs low, and when it does, when the furnace at last goes quiet, the outward push fails, and the truce breaks, and there is nothing left to hold the fist open against its own weight. And the weight has been waiting the whole time. Patient, certain, the weight was always going to win in the end. So the star falls, not outward into a scatter, though the outer layers may blast away. The core falls inward, toward its own center, all that mass collapsing on all that mass. And here is where we leave everything ordinary behind. Because if the core that remains is heavy enough, more than about 3 times the mass of the Sun, then nothing known can stop the fall. Not the fire, which is out. Not the stiffness of matter itself, which we are about to watch fail. Nothing. The weight pulls the matter in, and the matter goes, and there is no floor for it to land on. I need to slow down here, because this is the exact moment where your intuition and reality part ways. And if we go too fast, you will nod at the words and keep your old picture underneath. You have an instinct, a deep and reasonable instinct, that matter is solid, that things have a size, that you can press on a stone and it presses back, that a wall stops your hand, that stuff when you push it refuses to be pushed past a certain point. This instinct has served you your whole life, and it is completely correct for everything you have ever touched. Matter resists being compressed. Squeeze it and it pushes back, harder and harder, and at ordinary pressures it wins, and the object keeps its shape. But that resistance has a limit, and the limit is set by gravity, and gravity has no limit. Pile on enough mass, and the inward pull grows stronger than the outward stubbornness of matter itself. The atoms, which spend their ordinary lives holding each other politely at arm's length, mostly empty space between a tiny dense center and its distant cloud, get pressed until that space collapses. The arm's length closes, and then the deeper structures that resist collapse give way too, one after another, each a wall you thought was final, each turning out to be a stage the falling matter simply passes through on its way down. There is no known point where it stops. That is the sentence you have to sit with. In your entire life, every time you have pressed on something, it has pushed back and won. Here, at last, is a place where the pushing back loses completely, and the matter keeps falling in toward a smallness we have no honest word for. So take the fist, take the star or the heavy core of a much larger one, that ball wider than you can easily picture, holding within it more mass than 300,000 Earths, and collapse it, not to the size of the Earth, not to the size of a city, though it passes through that size on the way. Take all of that mass, the whole crushing weight of a star, and press it into a region you could, at least in the imagining, walk across in a few strides, a few miles, then smaller. The pressing does not stop where your imagination wants it to. Hold the grain of sand again, the one that was the whole Earth. Now understand that we have taken the fist, which was 300,000 times heavier than the grain, and we have pressed the fist down toward a point, and the point is smaller than the grain. The mass of a star, more than the mass of 1/3 of a million Earths, folded down into a volume that makes the grain of sand look enormous. That is density. Not the density of lead, which is heavy in your hand, but honestly quite roomy at the scale of atoms. Not the density of the core of the Earth. A density with no comparison in the ordinary world, because the ordinary world is held apart by forces that here have simply lost. The mass of a fist inside less than a grain. And in the deepest models, smaller still, toward a smallness we will meet properly much later and will not pretend to fully understand. This is the moment the word empty dies. Because look at what we have. We have not removed anything. We have added nothing to the region and taken nothing from it. We have taken a star, a whole star, all of it, every bit of matter that was pushing out fire and hanging in the sky as a fist of light, and we have kept every gram of it and pressed it into almost no room at all. Nothing left, nothing gone, everything still here, only smaller, only closer to itself, only crushed. Is that empty? Is that a hole? A hole is where the matter has been taken out. This is the exact opposite. This is where the matter has been driven together with a totality that has no equal anywhere else in the universe. This is the most concentrated matter that exists. Not thin, not absent, not hollowed. Full past every meaning the word full has ever carried for you. Let me say that again so it registers. We did not empty anything. We concentrated it. The dark region at the end of this collapse is not a place where a star used to be and now is gone. It is the place where the entire star is, all of it, in almost none of the space it used to fill. That is the fullness. That is what the darkness is hiding. Now, you might ask a fair question, and it is worth answering carefully, because the answer is one of the most beautiful and most misunderstood things in all of this. If there is so much mass pressed into so small a space, does it not pull everything toward it with some special, greedy, unnatural hunger? Is a black hole not a kind of monster that reaches out and drags the universe into its mouth? No. And the no is important, and it is subtle, and it corrects the last piece of the drain picture we set down at the start. Here is the truth. A black hole pulls on you with gravity, yes, but gravity is not a hunger, and not a reaching, and not a suction. Let me give you the honest picture, because it is stranger and calmer than the monster. Mass does not pull on things across empty space by grabbing them. Mass shapes the space around it. This is the deep thing, the thing that took humanity a very long time and one extraordinary mind to see clearly. Space and time are not a fixed empty stage on which matter sits. They are more like a fabric, a shape, a geometry, and mass bends that geometry. Put mass somewhere, and the space around it is no longer flat. It curves, it dips, it steepens, and the paths that things follow through that space bend accordingly. What you feel as the pull of gravity is not a rope tugging you. It is you following the natural straight path through a space that has been curved by nearby mass. You fall not because something grabs you, but because the shape of the space around the mass slopes downhill, and you, like everything, follow the slope. The sun bends the space around it, and the earth follows the curve, which we call an orbit. The earth bends the space around it more gently, and you feel that as your weight, as the reason a dropped stone falls. Every mass bends the space around it in proportion to how much mass it is. This is gravity, not a pull, a shape. Now here is the both and I want you to hold both halves at once, because they are both true, and they seem to fight, and they do not fight. A black hole bends space around it, and a black hole bends space around it in exactly the way that same amount of mass would if it was still a star. Both true. Listen to what that means. If, right now, some cosmic hand replaced the sun with a black hole of precisely the same mass, kept every gram, changed nothing but the size, pressed the fist down into the tiny crushed point, the Earth would not be dragged in. The Earth would keep orbiting exactly as it does now, on the same path, at the same speed, feeling the same pull, because the mass is the same, and the pull far away depends only on the mass. From out here, from the distance of a planet, a black hole of the sun's mass, and the sun itself curve the distant space identically. No extra hunger, no reaching, no greed. The same mass makes the same distant curve. A black hole does not pull on the faraway universe any harder than ordinary mass would. It pulls exactly as hard as its mass says it should, no more. So where does the terror come from? The sense of a place of no return? It does not come from the pull being stronger far away. It comes from the mass being smaller, because you can get closer. With an ordinary star, the surface stops you. You cannot approach the center of the sun, because the body of the sun is in the way, a fist of matter you would have to pass through, and long before you reached the center, the outward layers would hold you at a distance of hundreds of thousands of miles. The size of the star protects the space near its center from ever getting truly steep. The steepest curvature is buried inside a body you can never enter. But crush that same mass down to almost nothing, and the body no longer blocks the way. Now you can approach the point where all the mass is concentrated, closer and closer. And as you get closer to a concentration of mass, the curvature of space steepens, the slope gets sharper, the pull grows. With the star, you could never get close enough for the slope to become extreme, because the star's own bulk kept you out. With the black hole, the bulk is gone, folded away into that tiny crushed point, and the space right up close to it is free for you to fall through, steepening and steepening as you go, until eventually you reach a region where the slope has become so steep that not even light, the fastest thing there is, can climb back out. Do you see what happened? The danger is not that the mass got hungrier. The danger is that the mass got smaller, and so you can now get near the ferocity that was always there in principle but was always hidden inside the body of an ordinary star. The black hole did not add power. It removed the protection of size. It let the steepness reach the surface, so to speak, where you can fall into it. Sit with that, because it dissolves the monster. There is no reaching. There is only a slope that was always possible for that much mass, finally uncovered because the mass has been pressed small enough to let you approach it. And now let me bring it back to the fullness, because the two ideas fit together into a single picture, and once you see them locked together, the object stops being a horror and becomes something closer to awe. The reason the space near a black hole gets so steep that light cannot escape is that the mass is so concentrated. The steepness is a direct expression of the fullness. A black hole is not dark because it is empty. It is dark because it is so completely full, so utterly concentrated, that the geometry right around it has been bent past the point where light can leave. The darkness and the fullness are the same fact seen from two sides. The matter is crushed together so totally that the space around the crush is folded shut, and light, arriving at that fold, cannot get back over the rim to reach your eye. So you see black, and the black is the fullest thing there is. Let me stay in this for a moment and let it accumulate, because this is the peak of this layer, and I want you to feel it and not just follow it. It is the most concentrated matter in the universe. It is the most gravitationally steep region in the universe. It is the darkest object in the sky, and every one of those three is the same sentence. It is dark because it is steep. It is steep because it is concentrated. It is concentrated because a whole star has been pressed into almost no room and nothing came back out. The darkness is the fullness. The fullness is the steepness. The steepness is the darkness. One thing. Three faces. Turn it however you like, and you meet the same crush at the center, the most crowded place we know of, not the emptiest, the most crowded. A star folded into a grain, a fist pressed smaller than a speck, every gram kept, nothing lost, nothing removed, everything driven together into a concentration the ordinary world has no example of, and your instincts have no preparation for. When your eye looks at that region and reports nothing, it is not reporting an absence. It is reporting a fullness so total that the light which would have told you about it cannot climb out of the fold to reach you. Come back to the anchor, the patch of dark sky you were holding. You looked at it and your eye said empty. And now you have the beginning of a reason to doubt your eye, because there is a second kind of dark, and you have just walked into its structure, and it is the dark not of nothing but of everything, pressed too tight for its own light to leave. We have felt the weight now. We have watched matter fall past every wall and find no floor. We have watched a star become a crush smaller than a grain, and we have learned that the strangeness is not a hunger but a shape, a slope uncovered by the folding away of size. But we have been standing at the crushed center this whole time. We have not yet looked at what surrounds it, because most of these objects are not alone in the dark. Most of them are wrapped in fire, and the darkest thing in the universe is, very often, ringed by some of the brightest light the universe has ever made. That is where we go next. Out from the crush, just a little, to the ring of fire at the edge of the dark. We have been standing at the crush this whole time, down at the folded center, feeling the weight of a star pressed into almost no room. Now, step back, just a little. Pull your attention out from the crushed point and let it settle on the space just around it, the region where the folding of space begins to steepen but has not yet closed. Because here, in that ring of space just outside the dark, something extraordinary is almost always happening, and it is the exact opposite of darkness. It is fire, it is light. It is some of the brightest, most violent, most luminous glowing anywhere in all of creation, and it is wrapped around the black thing like a crown. This is the part of the story the pictures actually show you. When you have seen an image of a black hole, and by now you almost certainly have, you did not see the black hole. You cannot see a black hole. It gives back no light. What you saw was a ring of fire with a dark center, and the fire is the thing we turn to now. Let me build it slowly, because the how of it matters as much as the what. A black hole rarely sits alone in clean, empty space. It sits in a galaxy or in a crowded region, surrounded by gas, by dust, by the shredded material of stars, by the ordinary matter that fills the universe in thin drifting clouds. And all of that matter feels the slope we described. The curvature of space near the black hole reaches out, gently at first, and the surrounding gas begins to fall, not straight in. Almost nothing falls straight in. Everything in the universe is moving, drifting, spinning a little, and so the gas does not drop toward the center like a stone down a well. It spirals. It circles as it falls, the way water circles a drain, the way anything with a sideways motion circles as it is pulled inward. And as it spirals in, it flattens, a shapeless cloud of infalling gas, given time, settles into a disk, a broad, flat, spinning plate of matter, wider than we can easily say, turning around the dark center like a record on a turntable, each ring of it orbiting a little faster the closer it lies to the crush. This is the accretion disk. Accretion is just the word for matter gathering, falling together, piling in. The disk is the pile, spread flat and set spinning by the fall. Now here is where the fire comes from, and it is worth understanding, because it is not fire in the ordinary sense. Nothing is burning. There is no fuel, no flame, no chemistry. The light comes from a simpler and more violent source: friction, speed, the sheer brutal fact of matter moving very fast and rubbing against itself. Think of the disk. The inner rings orbit faster than the outer rings, much faster, because they lie deeper in the steepening slope. So the disk is not turning as a solid plate. It is shearing, each ring sliding past the ring just inside it, faster and faster toward the center. And where the rings grind against one another, the gas is torn and stirred and heated. Rub your hands together and they warm. That is friction turning motion into heat, a tiny domestic version of exactly this. Now take that principle and drive it with the speed of matter, falling through the steepest gravity in the universe, and the warming becomes something without any comparison in your experience. Because the speeds here are not the speeds of anything you have felt. Near the inner edge of the disk, closest to the dark, the gas is not moving at the speed of a car, or a plane, or a rocket. It is moving at a substantial fraction of the speed of light. Let me try to make that feelable, though I will warn you honestly that it cannot be fully felt, only approached. Light crosses the distance from the Earth to the Moon in a little over a second. Light crosses the entire width of your country in the blink of an eye, faster than you can register the blink. The gas in the inner disk is moving at a large fraction of that speed. It is circling the black hole so fast that it completes an entire orbit, a full loop around the crushed center, in a time you would measure not in years, as the Earth takes around the Sun, not in days, but in minutes, sometimes less. A whole world's worth of gas, whipping around the dark at a speed that turns the distance from here to the Moon into a heartbeat. Hold the grain of sand again, our anchor scale, the Earth as a grain. At that scale, the Sun was a fist. The gas in the inner disk of a large black hole is moving fast enough that, shrunk to this model, it would blur past your eye too quickly to see, a smear of motion around the dark, orbiting in the time it takes you to draw breath. And matter moving that fast, sheared and torn against itself, heats to temperatures that leave the ordinary meaning of hot far behind. Let me translate, and again let me be honest, that the translation strains. The surface of the Sun, the fist, the thing so bright you cannot look at it, is around 10,000 degrees. Hot beyond any fire you have kindled, hot enough to turn matter to glowing gas, hot enough to pour out the light that crosses 90 million miles of space and still warms your face. 10,000 degrees. Hold that as your ceiling for hot, the hottest thing your world contains. The inner accretion disk of a black hole can reach temperatures not of 10,000 degrees, but of millions of degrees, hundreds of times hotter than the surface of the Sun, and in the most extreme regions, hotter still. So hot that the light it pours out is not the gentle yellow light of a star. It is fiercer light, more energetic light, light your eyes were never built to see, light in the form of X-rays, the same kind of ray that looks through your body at a doctor's office, streaming off the inner disk in floods. That is the fire around the dark, not a flame, a river of gas moving at nearly the speed of light, heated by its own shearing fall to millions of degrees, glowing across the whole spectrum of light, including kinds of light so energetic we can only detect them with instruments in space above our atmosphere. The darkest object in the universe, wrapped in a crown of the hottest, fastest, most luminous matter the universe knows how to make. Let that land for a second. The darkest thing, wearing the brightest fire. Now, let me give you the scale of the output, because the brightness is not just intense up close. It is enormous in total, and the totals are where the ore lives. When matter falls into a black hole through a disk like this, an astonishing fraction of its very mass, gets converted into pure light before it ever crosses into the dark. This is the deep engine of the whole spectacle. As the gas falls deeper into the slope and rubs and heats and glows, it is trading a portion of its substance for radiance, shedding energy as light so that it can settle deeper in. And the falling into a black hole's gravity is the most efficient way the universe has of turning matter into light, far more efficient than the nuclear fire in the heart of a star. Pound for pound, gram for gram, An accretion disk squeezes more light out of its matter than the furnace of the sun does out of its. So the disks can shine, not like a star, like a galaxy, like more than a galaxy. There are black holes at the centers of distant galaxies, feeding on great floods of infalling gas, whose disks pour out more light than all the hundreds of billions of stars in the galaxy around them combined. One dark crushed point at the center, one spinning disk of fire around it, outshining every star in its entire galaxy put together. We see these objects from across almost the whole width of the observable universe, from distances so great the light has been traveling toward us for most of the age of everything, and they are among the brightest single things we can find in all the sky. And the engine of that light, the source of that impossible brightness, is matter falling toward the darkest object there is. Sit with that. The brightest steady beacons in the entire universe are powered by the darkest objects in it. The two are not opposites that happen to sit near each other. The brightness is caused by the darkness, or rather, by the crush that makes the darkness. The steep slope that folds light away at the center is the very same slope that accelerates and heats the infalling gas to its blinding glow just outside. One steepness, two consequences. The dark at the center, the fire around it, both from the same crush, both true at once. This is the both and at its most vivid, and I want to hold you in it rather than resolve it, because the not resolving is the point. The object is dark, the object is bright. These are not in conflict. The blackness at the center and the blaze around the edge are the same physics wearing its two faces. The way the fullness and the darkness were the same physics one layer ago. Turn the crush toward you and you see fire. Turn it a little further and you see the dark at its heart. Same object, same slope, same fact. And here is the turn I want to plant now, quietly, because it changes what the darkness even means. The black at the center is only black by contrast. Think about what it means to see a black hole in an image. You do not see darkness against darkness, which would show you nothing at all. You see darkness against fire. The ring of glowing matter is the background, blazing, and the black hole sits in front of it. And around the black hole the fire's own light bends in the steep curved space and wraps toward you, so that the dark region is outlined, framed, ringed by light that has been bent around it. The blackness only becomes visible because there is so much light around it and behind it for the darkness to stand against. Without the fire, the black hole would be invisible, truly invisible. Nothing to see, no light coming from it, no light behind it to be blocked, just a piece of dark sky indistinguishable from the ordinary dark. It is the fire that makes the darkness show. The brightness is what lets you see the black at all. Let me say that again so it registers. The dark is only dark by contrast with the light around it. The black hole becomes a thing you can point to only because it sits inside a blaze, and the blaze throws its darkness into relief. The fullness at the center casts a shadow, and the shadow is only a shadow because there is so much light for it to fall across. There is a word for what you actually see when you look at one of these objects, and the word is not whole and not disk. The word is shadow. What the images show is the shadow of the black hole, the dark round region where the fire behind it has been swallowed and cannot reach you, ringed by the bent light of the fire that got close, but not too close, and curved around the rim to find your eye instead. A shadow needs a light to cast it. A shadow is not an absence of a thing. It is the mark a thing leaves on the light around it. And that is what the darkness of a black hole truly is, seen from outside. Not an empty patch, a shadow cast on fire. Hold that, because it is doing quiet work on our whole picture. We began with the darkness, looking like emptiness, like a hole, like nothing. Then we learned the darkness was fullness, the crush of a whole star pressed small. And now we learn that even the darkness we see, the visible black in the images, is not the crush itself, but its shadow thrown across a wall of fire. Layer by layer, the emptiness keeps turning into its opposite. Nothing becomes everything. Absence becomes concentration, and the black patch becomes a shadow that could not exist without an enormous surrounding light. Come back to the fire itself for a moment, because I do not want to leave the brightness behind too quickly, and because it is genuinely one of the most beautiful things in the sky. Imagine standing at a safe and impossible distance and watching one of these disks turn. It would not look like a calm plate. It would seethe. Bright knots would form and stretch and tear as the shearing rings dragged them apart. Great arcs of gas would flare and fade. Magnetic fields, wound and twisted by the spinning, would grab the gas and fling some of it away in vast jets, shooting out from above and below the disk. Streams of matter hurled back out into the galaxy at nearly the speed of light, glowing all the way. The disk near the center would be almost too bright to look at, the outer regions cooler and redder, a gradient of fire from white violence at the inner edge to a duller glow far out. And in the middle of all of it, framed by the blaze, the dark, round, silent, the shadow of the crush, the brightest fire we know, and at its center, a hole of black that is not a hole and not empty, but the fullest thing there is, showing you its shadow, because the fire behind it lets the shadow be seen. That is the picture. That is what the telescopes reach for. Not the dark alone, which cannot be seen, but the dark against the fire, the shadow on the blaze. And I want to leave this layer on the tension rather than smoothing it away, because the tension is the truth. You have been taught somewhere deep to sort the universe into bright things and dark things, stars and voids, light and its absence. Here is an object that refuses the sorting. It is the darkest thing in the sky, and it makes the brightest light in the sky, and it does both with the same steep folded geometry, and the darkness you finally see is only a shadow thrown across that very light. Bright and dark, not fighting, not separate, but two readings of one crushed and glowing thing. Come back once more to the anchor, the patch of night sky you are holding. You looked at it and saw dark and thought empty. We have now added a second strangeness to your looking. Some of the dark points in that sky are not empty and not simply full. Some of them are ringed out where your eye cannot resolve it, by fire brighter than whole galaxies, and the only reason such a point would ever look merely dark to you is that it is unimaginably far away, and your eye is unimaginably small. Up close, that same dark point would blaze. The emptiness your eye reports is not just hiding a fullness. In many cases, it is hiding a fire. We have felt the weight. We have stood in the fire. We have learned that the dark is a shadow cast on light. But we have been circling the edge this whole time, the border between the fire and the black, approaching it and pulling back, and we have not yet crossed it or even properly looked at it. That border has a name, and everyone imagines it as a surface, a shell, a wall you could touch. It is none of those things. It is a boundary drawn in the geometry of space itself, a line past which the traffic goes one way and never returns. That is where we go next, to the edge of the dark, to the event horizon, to the boundary that is not a surface. We have been circling the edge of the dark this whole time, moving toward it through the fire and pulling back, and now it is time to look at the edge itself, the border between the blaze and the black, the place everyone calls the surface of a black hole, and the place that is not a surface at all. It has a name, the event horizon. Hold the word gently for a moment before we take it apart, because unlike black hole, this name is honest. Horizon. Not wall, not shell, not edge in the sense of a thing you could strike your hand against. Horizon. Think about what a horizon actually is, the ordinary one, the line where the sea meets the sky when you stand on a shore. You have looked at that line your whole life. It seems to be a place. It seems to be out there, a definite boundary at the rim of the world, where the water ends and the air begins. But you know, if you stop and think, that there is nothing there. If you got in a boat and sailed toward the horizon, you would never reach it. There is no line on the water where you could reach down and touch the edge. The horizon is not a thing sitting at a location. It is a boundary defined by your position and the curve of the earth, the limit of how far your line of sight can reach before the planet's roundness hides the rest. It is real. Ships truly do vanish over it, but it is not made of anything. It is a fact about seeing, drawn on a world that curves. The event horizon of a black hole is a horizon in exactly this deeper sense. It is not made of anything. There is no shell there, no membrane, no surface, no wall of matter or energy or force. If you fell toward a large black hole and crossed its event horizon, there would be nothing to feel at the crossing, no barrier to push through, no skin of the object to break, no moment where your hand meets the black. Nothing there is there in the sense of a substance. It is a horizon, a boundary defined not by a thing but by a condition. And here is the condition, the single clean fact that draws the line. The event horizon is the place past which not even light can climb back out. That is the whole definition. Everything else about it follows from that one sentence. So let us hold it and turn it slowly. Remember the slope. Remember that mass bends the space around it, and that near a black hole the bending steepens, the slope of the space getting sharper the closer you fall toward the crushed center. Remember that what you feel as gravity is the following of that slope. Now, light travels through space too, and light also follows the shape of the space it moves through. Light is fast, the fastest thing there is, and for most of the universe it moves freely, climbing out of the gentle slopes around stars and planets without trouble, reaching your eye across enormous distances. When light leaves the surface of the sun, It climbs out of the sun's slope easily and pours across space to warm your face. The sun's slope is not steep enough to hold its own light, but as you fall toward a black hole, the slope steepens, and light trying to climb back out from deep in that slope has a harder and harder time, like a runner going up an ever steeper hill, slowing, straining. The light still moves at its own unchanging speed. It does not slow down in that sense, but the slope it must climb grows so steep that the climbing costs it more and more, stretching it, draining it, dimming it, as it fights its way up toward the outside. And then there is a place, a definite distance from the center, where the slope becomes so steep that light cannot climb it at all. A place where the outward path has curved so completely that there is no longer any outward, where every direction that light could travel, every single one, bends back inward toward the crush. That place is the event horizon. It is the exact boundary where the last possibility of escape closes. One step outside it, and light, straining, can still just barely climb away and reach the distant universe. One step inside it, and there is no direction that leads out. Every path light could take leads deeper in. Let that land for a second. Inside the horizon, out is not a direction anymore. I want to be careful and precise here, because this is the strangest thing in the whole walk, and it is easy to say it in a way that sounds like poetry when it is actually geometry. It is not that light inside the horizon tries to leave and is dragged back, like a swimmer caught in a current, fighting towards shore and losing. It is that inside the horizon there is no shore. The space is bent so completely that the direction we call out has folded away and no longer exists as somewhere you can go. Falling deeper toward the center becomes as inevitable as moving forward in time. You cannot choose not to. There is no more an outward path than there is a path back to yesterday. The geometry has closed around you, and every future, every possible motion leads inward. This is why nothing comes back. Not because a black hole grips its contents in some tightening fist, because inside the horizon, coming back is not a place that exists. The way out has been removed from the map of possible directions, and light, which is the fastest messenger the universe has, which can outrun anything, cannot find a way out either, because the way out is not slow, it is gone. So the event horizon is a one-way boundary. Things can cross it inward, nothing crosses it outward. Not matter, not light, not information, not any signal of any kind. It is the most complete one-way door in existence, and it is made of nothing at all. Just a place in the geometry where the slope tips past the point of return. Now let me take you across it, carefully, because what the crossing would and would not feel like tells you what kind of boundary this really is. Imagine you are falling toward a large black hole, a big one, the kind at the center of a galaxy, because the big ones are gentler at the horizon, and I want the picture clean before we complicate it. You are falling. The dark region grows in your view, the ring of fire blazes around it, and you are watching for the moment you cross the horizon, waiting to feel it, waiting for the barrier, the threshold, the great line you have heard so much about, and you feel nothing. There is no jolt, no membrane, no sensation of passing through. The horizon is not a place where anything happens to you locally. You cross it the way a ship crosses the line of the sea horizon, which is to say you do not notice a crossing at all because there is nothing there to notice. If you were falling freely, weightless, you might not even be able to say exactly when you passed it. One moment you are outside, in a region from which escape is still possible. The next moment, you are inside, in a region from which no escape exists, and nothing marks the transition. No wall, no flash, no felt boundary, just an ordinary continuation of falling through a place that looks up close like any other place, while the entire meaning of your situation has silently and completely changed. Sit with how strange that is. The most decisive boundary in the universe, the line past which you can never return, past which no word you speak will ever reach anyone outside again, and crossing it feels like nothing. The catastrophe is not in the sensation. There is no sensation. The catastrophe is in the geometry, invisible, silent, absolute. You would carry on falling, feeling ordinary, while behind you a door had closed that was not a door and could never open, made of nothing, felt as nothing, and permanent. This is where the heaviness enters the walk, and I am not going to rush you past it, because it is a real heaviness and it deserves to be sat with rather than hurried through. Think about what the horizon means for connection, for messages, for the possibility of reaching across. Everything we know about the universe, we know because light and other signals reach us. The stars are known to us because their light crosses the space between. The distant galaxies, the fire around black holes, the whole immense archive of the cosmos arrives at our instruments as signal, as message, as light that made the journey. The universe is knowable because it is, in this sense, in touch with itself. Light travels, word gets around. What happens in one place can, in time, be known in another, because a signal can make the crossing. The event horizon is the one place where that stops, absolutely, forever. Whatever happens inside the horizon can never be known outside it. Not because we lack the instruments, not because it is too far or too faint, because no signal of any kind can make the crossing, ever, in principle, by the very shape of space. The inside of a black hole is the one region of reality that is permanently, structurally, geometrically cut off from the rest, sealed. Not hidden, sealed. And here is the thought I want to give you, the one that carries the weight of this whole layer. Imagine a neighbor on the far side of that boundary. Imagine falling ahead of you into the same black hole, another person, someone who crossed the horizon a little before you will. They are in there now, inside, still falling, perhaps still conscious for a while, perhaps looking around at whatever there is to see in a place we cannot describe. They are real, they exist. They are, in some sense, only a little way ahead of you, closer to you in distance than many stars, and you can never reach them, not because they are far, they are near. You can never reach them because they are on the other side of the horizon, and no signal you send will ever cross it to them in a way that comes back, and no signal they send will ever cross it outward to you. They are a neighbor, closer than the nearest star, and more unreachable than the edge of the observable universe, present and utterly beyond contact. There, and you're gone. Let me sit in that with you, because it is the low point of the walk, and I do not want to leave you alone in it. There is a particular kind of loneliness that this object introduces into the universe, and it is not an emotional loneliness. It is a geometric one. It is the fact that reality contains regions that can be fallen into and never spoken to. Places where a neighbor can be near in space and infinitely far in the only sense that matters, the sense of being able to send or receive a single word. We are used to distance, meaning far. Here is a distance that has nothing to do with far. Here is separation built not from miles, but from the shape of space. A separation no speed could overcome, because the thing in the way is not a gap to be crossed, but a direction that has ceased to exist. The unreachable neighbor, present, real, close, and sealed away behind a boundary made of nothing, felt as nothing, and permanent as anything the universe contains. And I want to hold you steady here, because it would be easy to let this tip into something bleak. And bleak is not quite right. It is heavy, yes. It is the heaviest thing in the walk. But it is not a horror, and it is not a cruelty. It is a fact about the geometry of a very concentrated mass, the same geometry that gives us the fire and the shadow and the crush. The horizon is not a mouth. It is not hunting anyone. It is a threshold in the shape of space, drawn by the fullness at the center, and it does only one thing, which is to mark the place past, which out is no longer a direction. That it also seals away whatever crosses it is not malice, it is geometry. The same steep, folded space that we found beautiful in the fire is, at the horizon, isolating. One shape. The awe and the loneliness are two readings of it, the way the brightness and the darkness were. Let me stay a moment longer with the strangeness of the boundary itself, because there is one more thing about it that deepens rather than lightens, and I want it in the picture before we go further in. From the outside, from where you are, the horizon has an odd relationship to time as well as to space. If you watched your neighbor fall toward the horizon from a safe distance, you would never actually see them cross it. Their light, climbing out of the steepening slope, would take longer and longer to reach you, stretched and dimmed and slowed, so that from your vantage they would seem to approach the horizon and slow and fade, growing dimmer and redder and more still, hovering forever at the very edge, never quite arriving, their final image frozen and fading at the threshold while, from their own point of view, they fell smoothly through and onward without pause. Two truths again. From inside, a clean crossing in an ordinary moment. From outside, an endless slowing approach that never completes. Both real, both what the geometry says. The horizon does not just seal space. It bends the very meaning of when, so that the crossing that is instant from within is eternal from without. Hold both. From their side, they are already through and gone. From your side, they are forever approaching and never arrive. The boundary sits between those two accounts, made of nothing, and both are true. This is the deepest quiet of the walk. We came inward, looking for a hole, and found a crush. We looked at the crush and found it wrapped in fire. We looked past the fire to the edge and found not a surface, but a horizon, a boundary made of nothing, felt as nothing, past which out is not a direction, and no word returns, and time itself bends, so that crossings become eternal from one side and instant from the other, and behind it, always, the unreachable neighbour, near and sealed away. Come back once more to the anchor, the dark patch of sky you have been holding since the beginning. When you looked at it, you saw emptiness, and we replaced emptiness with fullness, and fullness with fire, and now, at the edge of the fire, with this, a boundary you could never touch because there is nothing there to touch, and could never return from because return is not a place. The dark points in the sky are not just full, and not just burning. Some of them hold thresholds past which the universe cannot reach itself. Sealed rooms with neighbors inside them we will never hear from. We have gone as far as feeling can carry us on its own. We have crossed the horizon in imagination and found the geometric loneliness on the other side. And now there is only one direction left. The direction that was the only direction once we crossed, inward, toward the center, toward the crush at the heart of it all, the place we have named but not looked at, the place where our knowledge itself runs out and honest physics sets down its pen. That is where we go next, not to a floor, not to a bottom, to the place where the map ends. We crossed the horizon in the last layer, and once across, we learned there is only one direction left, inward, toward the center. So let us go there now, all the way in, to the place at the very heart of it, the place we have named again and again without ever looking at. And let us look at it honestly, because honesty here at the center means admitting something that most stories about black holes are reluctant to admit. We do not know what is there. Let me say that plainly before I say anything else, because everything in this layer depends on it. At the center of a black hole, our knowledge stops. Not our curiosity, not our mathematics, which keeps going a little further than our understanding does, but our actual grasp of what is happening, our ability to say with confidence, this is what is there and this is what it is doing, stops. There is a wall, and it is not a wall of matter and not a wall of darkness. It is a wall of not knowing, and it sits at the exact center of the most studied strange object in the sky. There is a word for the center, and you have heard it, and the word is doing damage, the same way black hole was doing damage at the very start. The word is singularity, and the picture the word hands you, smoothly, before you have a chance to question it, is a point. A single infinitely small dot where all the mass has gathered, a place of infinite density, a period at the end of the sentence of the collapse. All the crushing we watched, the star folding down past every wall, presses on in this picture until it reaches a point of literally zero size and literally infinite density, and there it sits, a dot of infinity at the center of the dark. I want to take that picture away from you, gently, not because I have a better dot to offer, but because the dot is not knowledge. The dot is what our equations say when they break. And there is a difference, an enormous and honest difference, between a description of nature and the noise a description makes when it fails. Let me explain what I mean, because this is the heart of the whole matter, and I want it to be clear rather than mysterious. We have a theory of gravity, It is the deepest and most tested theory of gravity we have ever had, and it is the theory that has carried us through this entire walk. It is the theory that says mass bends space, that gravity is the shape of that bending, that light follows the curve, that a steep enough curve makes a horizon. Everything we have said, the crush, the slope, the fire, the horizon, all of it comes from this theory. And the theory has been tested again and again and has passed every test with a precision that is almost unreasonable. It works. It describes the real universe. We trust it, and we are right to. But every theory has a domain, a region where it applies, and a limit where it stops applying. And this theory, when you follow it inward past the horizon toward the center, begins to describe conditions it was never built to survive. The mass keeps concentrating, the curve keeps steepening, and the theory, faithfully, keeps calculating, following its own rules towards smaller and smaller size and greater density, until it arrives at a place where its numbers stop being numbers, where the density it calculates is not large but infinite, where the curvature is not steep but unbounded, where the equations produce, instead of an answer, a kind of breakdown, a division by zero, a result that is not a result. That breakdown is the singularity, not a confirmed dot of infinite matter sitting at the center, a place where our best theory stops being able to speak. The singularity is not something the theory shows us. It is the theory telling us, in the only way a theory can, that we have reached the edge of what it knows. It is a signpost that reads, "From here, this map is blank." Let that land for a second. The singularity is not the deepest thing we know about black holes. It is the marker of where our knowing ends. I want to hold this distinction carefully, because it is subtle and it matters more than almost anything else in this walk. When a theory produces an infinity, there are two things it could mean. It could mean that nature really does become infinite there, that there truly is a point of infinite density at the center. Or it could mean that the theory has been pushed past its limit and is no longer describing nature at all, the way a map of a country tells you nothing true if you sail off its edge into waters it never charted. And the overwhelming judgment of the people who study this most closely is the second. The infinity is almost certainly not a fact about nature. It is a fact about the theory reaching its border. Somewhere on the way to that impossible center, our physics stops applying, and something else, some deeper description we do not yet possess, takes over. And what that deeper description says is, there, at the true center, we honestly do not know. So the center of a black hole is not a dot of infinity. The center of a black hole is a question we cannot yet answer, wrapped inside a horizon we cannot see past, sealed away from every instrument we could ever build. It is the one place where the universe keeps its answer completely to itself. Now I could leave you there, at the blank edge of the map, and call the not knowing a kind of defeat. But it is not a defeat, and to see why, I want to turn away from the center for a while and toward the people. Because the story of how we came to know even this much, how we came to know precisely where our knowing runs out, is a story of patience across generations, of people who never saw the thing they were describing and gave their working lives to describing it anyway. And that patience is where the awe of this layer actually lives. Consider how strange the whole enterprise is. No one has ever seen the inside of a black hole. No one ever will. No one has stood at a horizon, or watched a singularity, or measured the crush directly. Everything we have said in this entire walk was built not from seeing, but from thinking, from a chain of careful minds, each handing their work to the next, across more than a century, most of them dying long before the smallest piece of it was ever confirmed by observation. This is knowledge assembled almost entirely in the dark, by patience, on trust in the mathematics and in each other. It begins, as so much of modern physics begins, with the theory of gravity as shape, the vision that mass bends space and space guides matter. That vision was the work of a single mind reaching, over years of difficult labor, toward equations that could hold it. And here is the thing to sit with. Almost immediately, before the ink was dry, before anyone imagined such objects were real, the equations were shown to permit something extreme, a concentration of mass so complete that the space around it would fold into exactly the kind of horizon we have been describing. This was found by a man working through the equations while serving in a war, calculating on the mathematics of curved space in the gaps between duty, sending his results back to be published, and dying not long after of illness contracted in that same war. He found the horizon in the mathematics decades before anyone believed such a thing could exist in nature. He never knew if it was real. He did the work anyway, and handed it forward, and was gone. Sit with that for a moment. A person finds, in the pure mathematics, the shape of an object that will not be confirmed to exist for the better part of 100 years, and does not live to see even the first hint of its reality. And this is normal in this story. This is how nearly all of it was done. For a long time after, the horizon in the equations was treated as a curiosity, a mathematical possibility that surely did not correspond to anything real. Serious people assumed nature would find some way to avoid it, that no real star would ever actually collapse so far, that the extreme solutions were artifacts, oddities, the mathematics permitting something the universe would never allow. The idea that these objects might genuinely form, might really be out there, was resisted for decades, not out of foolishness, but out of a reasonable caution, because the conclusion was so strange. It took patient work by a later generation to show that the collapse was not avoidable, that if a star was heavy enough, nothing known could stop it, that the horizon was not a mathematical accident, but an inevitable consequence of gravity doing what gravity does. This was slow, careful, contested work, argued over across years, and it turned the horizon from a curiosity into a prediction about the real sky. And then the deepest result of all, the one that speaks directly to the center we are standing at. Later still, a generation of mathematicians and physicists took up the question of whether the singularity, the breakdown at the center, was itself avoidable, or whether it too was forced. Perhaps, people hoped, the infinity was a special case, an artifact of assuming perfect symmetry, something that would smooth away if you allowed for the messiness of a real collapsing star, the lopsidedness, the spin, the imperfection. Perhaps a realistic collapse would miss the singularity somehow, and the extraordinary, patient work of that generation showed that it would not. That, under very general conditions, a collapse past the horizon must lead to the breakdown, that the singularity is not an artifact of neat assumptions but a forced feature of gravity in the extreme. In other words, they proved, with great rigor, and care exactly where our knowledge must run out. They mapped the edge of the map. They showed that the blank region is real, that it is forced, that gravity itself carries us to a place where gravity's own theory can no longer speak. Think about what kind of achievement that is. Not the discovery of what is at the center, the rigorous, careful, patient proof that our current theory must fail at the center, that the failure is not our fault or our laziness, but a real border built into the structure of the theory itself. They did not fill in the blank on the map. They proved the blank is there and drew its edges precisely so that we know exactly how far we can go and exactly where we must stop. That is a strange and beautiful kind of knowledge, knowing with precision the shape of your own ignorance. Let me hold the both and here, because it is the truth of this whole layer. We know a very great deal about black holes. We know how they form, from the collapse of heavy stars, the fire going out, and the weight winning. We know the shape of the space around them, the slope and the horizon, tested and confirmed. We know the fire of the accretion disk, its speeds and temperatures and impossible brightness. We have even now made images of the shadow, which we will come to. We know a very great deal, and at the center of all that knowing sits a wall of complete not knowing, a place our finest theory cannot describe, sealed behind a horizon no instrument can pierce. Both are true at once. Deep knowledge and, at its very core, total ignorance. The one does not cancel the other. They sit together, and the sitting together is the honest picture. And here is what I want you to feel about that wall of not knowing, because it would be easy to feel it as frustration, and I think that is the wrong feeling. The people who built this understanding did not treat the limit as a defeat. They treated it as a frontier. The fact that our theory breaks at the center is not an embarrassment to be hidden. It is the sharpest clue we have that there is a deeper theory waiting to be found, a description of gravity that does not break where this one breaks, that can speak where this one falls silent. The singularity is not the end of the story. It is the place the next chapter will have to be written by people not yet born, working on mathematics not yet invented, most of whom will also die before their work is confirmed, handing it forward the way it has always been handed forward. The wall of not knowing is not a full stop. It is an invitation, addressed to the future, written in the one place we cannot yet read. That is where the awe of this layer lives. Not in a reveal, because there is no reveal, no dramatic truth waiting to be uncovered at the center. The awe is in the limit itself, in the fact that reality contains a place where our understanding, however deep, must stop, and that we have been able to locate that place with precision, to walk right up to its edge and say, honestly, here, and no further, not yet. There is a particular dignity in that. Most of the time, ignorance is vague, a fog with no edges. Here, we have mapped the fog. We know exactly where it begins. We know its shape, and we know it was mapped by people who never saw the thing, who trusted the mathematics and each other, and the slow forward handing of work across generations, and who found, at the center of the darkest object in the universe, not an answer, but the precise location of the question. Let me say it once more, in the plainest register, so it settles. We followed the crush all the way down, past the horizon, inward to the center. And at the center, we did not find a dot of infinity, and we did not find nothing, and we did not find a flaw. We found the edge of what can be known, a corridor where the map, our best and most trusted map, simply runs out into blank. And we found that the running out is real and forced and precisely located, proved by patient people across 100 years, who gave their lives to charting exactly how far the light of understanding reaches before the dark begins. Come back to the anchor, the patch of night sky you have held since the first words. You looked at it and saw empty, and we have filled that emptiness, layer by layer, with fullness, with fire, with a sealed horizon, and now, at the very center, with this, a genuine mystery. Not a mystery in the loose sense of something we have not gotten around to explaining, but a mystery in the deep sense, a place sealed away from all observation, behind a boundary no signal crosses, at conditions our finest theory cannot describe. The dark points in the sky do not just hide fullness and fire and thresholds. At their hearts they hold the one thing the universe keeps entirely to itself. A question we have mapped the edges of and cannot enter. We have gone as deep as it is possible to go. There is nowhere further in. The only direction left now is back. Back out through the horizon, back through the fire, back across all the distance we have crossed to the surface of the sky and the patch of dark you have been holding. And when we get there, we are going to find that we have actually seen this thing, really seen it, photographed its shadow, turned a century of patient thinking in the dark into an image made of light. And then we are going to look at the anchor one last time, and it will not be empty anymore. That is where we go, and it is the last of the walk. Back to the beginning, changed. We have gone as deep as it is possible to go, all the way to the center where the map runs out, and there is nowhere further in. So now we turn, and we begin the long walk back out. And I want to bring one thing with us, one thing we have not yet touched, because it changes everything about the patch of dark you have been holding since the first words. We have actually seen this, not imagined it, not calculated it, seen it. We have made a picture of the shadow of a black hole with light, and it is real. And I want to tell you how, because the how is the most human part of the whole story. For 100 years, everything we said about these objects was built in the dark by thinking. The horizon was a shape in the equations. The crush was a consequence of the mathematics. The shadow on the fire was a prediction, a thing the theory said we ought to see if only we could look closely enough. But no one had looked closely enough. No one had seen it. The black hole remained for a century, a thing believed in on the strength of its effects and its mathematics, real to the physicists, but never once photographed, never once caught directly in an image, the way you might photograph a mountain or a face. The trouble was size. Not the size of the black holes, which are enormous, but the size they appear from here, which is almost nothing. The nearest large black holes are so far away that their shadows, seen from Earth, are smaller in the sky than almost anything we have ever tried to resolve. Picture trying to photograph a single grain of sand, our anchor grain, resting on the surface of the moon, and to photograph it clearly enough to see its shape. That is roughly the scale of the challenge. A shadow that small, that far, against the blaze of the fire around it. No single telescope on Earth could ever resolve something so fine. The task looked, for a long time, simply impossible. And here is where the patience comes back. The same patience we found at the center. The slow forward handing of work across people and years. Because a group of scientists, hundreds of them, across many countries, worked out that while no single telescope could do it, the whole Earth might. If you took radio telescopes scattered all across the planet, in deserts and on mountaintops and near the poles, and you linked them together, and you had them all watch the same tiny patch of sky at the same moment, and you combined what they saw with almost unimaginable care, then together they could act as a single telescope, nearly the size of the Earth itself. A telescope as wide as the world, assembled not from one great dish, but from many small ones joined by patience and mathematics and precisely synchronized time. Think about the labor in that. Telescopes on different continents, all watching together, each recording a flood of data so vast it could not be sent over any network, but had to be stored on stacks of physical drives and physically flown, on airplanes to one place to be combined. Data from near the South Pole that had to wait months for the season to change before it could even be shipped out. Years of work by hundreds of people to gather one image. Not a quick snapshot, a slow, collaborative, planet-wide act of looking, assembled by the same kind of patience that built the theory in the dark, only now turned outward, toward the sky, to see if the century of thinking had been right. And it had been right. When the image came, it showed exactly what 100 years of thinking had predicted. A ring of fire, and, at its center, dark, a round shadow, ringed by the bent glowing light of the matter around it, the fire wrapping the darkness, the shadow standing out against the blaze precisely as the theory said it must. The first was the shadow of the black hole at the heart of a great galaxy far from our own, a monster billions of times the mass of the sun, its shadow finally caught in an image made by the whole Earth watching at once. And later, harder, they caught another, closer to home, the shadow of the black hole at the center of our own galaxy, the one our own sun quietly circles, far off, once every couple 100 million years. Let that land for a second. We photographed the darkness. We made a picture of the one thing that gives back no light, by capturing the fire around it and the shadow it casts on that fire. The thing that had been, for a century, a shape in the equations and a belief in the mind, became an image on a screen, a real photograph of a real shadow, the edge of the dark caught at last in light. And what the image shows, what it confirms, is everything this walk has been about. It shows that the dark is real, that it is round, that it is the size the mathematics of the crush predicted, that it sits exactly where a horizon should sit around a mass that concentrated. It shows the shadow of the fullness thrown across the fire, precisely as a century of patient thinking said it would be. The picture is not just beautiful. It is a confirmation, written in light, that the strange story we have walked through is true. The crush is real. The horizon is real. The shadow on the fire is real. We have seen it. So now, at last, let us go all the way back out, back through the fire, back across all the distance, out to the surface of the night sky, and to the patch of dark you have been holding since the very first words of this walk. Look at it again, the dark patch between the stars, the one you rested your eyes on at the beginning, the one your eye reported as nothing, as empty, as the least interesting part of the sky. Look at it now, with everything we have walked through. You know now that not every dark patch hides a black hole. Most of the dark between the stars is ordinary distance, ordinary space, genuinely thin and genuinely dim. I will not tell you a comforting untruth that every gap is secretly full. Most gaps are just gaps. But you also know now, in a way you cannot unknow, that somewhere in that sky, in dark points scattered through it that your eye can never resolve, there are places where the darkness is the other kind, where the black is not the black of absence, but the black of a fullness so total that its own light cannot climb out to reach you, and you can no longer look at the dark the way you did before, because you know that at least some of it is not empty at all. Let me gather the whole walk into one held breath, because we are nearly at the end, and I want you to have all of it at once. We began with a word that lies, black hole, a word that told you absence, that told you a drain, a void, a pocket of nothing scooped from the sky, and we loosened your grip on it, and we went in. We found the crush, a whole star, more mass than 300,000 Earths, pressed past every wall that matter can raise against gravity, folded down into less than a grain of sand, nothing removed, nothing lost, everything kept and driven together into the most concentrated matter in the universe, not empty, full, fuller than anything. We found the fire, the blaze of the accretion disk, matter falling and shearing and heating to millions of degrees, moving at nearly the speed of light, pouring out more brightness than whole galaxies of stars, wrapping the darkest object in the universe in the brightest light we know. And we learned that the dark is only dark by contrast with that fire, that what we see is a shadow, the shadow of the fullness thrown across the light. We found a horizon, not a wall, not a surface, nothing you could touch, a boundary made only of geometry, the place past which out is no longer a direction, and no signal ever returns. And behind it, the unreachable neighbor, near as anything and sealed away forever, present and beyond all contact, held from us not by distance, but by the shape of space itself. And we found the center, not a dot of infinity, not a flaw, not nothing, but the edge of the map, the place our finest theory falls silent, the one question the universe keeps entirely to itself. Its edges, charted with precision by 100 years of patient people who never once saw the thing they gave their lives to describing. And then we came back out, and we found that we have seen it, really seen it, photographed the shadow with a telescope the size of the earth, turned the century of thinking in the dark into an image made of light. All of that lives inside the patch of dark you are holding. So, here is the reframe, one last time, and now it is not a claim I am asking you to accept. It is a thing you have walked through and can feel. The darkest thing in the sky is dark, because it is full, not because it is empty. The black is not the color of nothing. It is the color of everything, pressed too close together, too tightly, for its own light to escape and tell you it is there. The dark is not absence. The dark is fullness, sealed. The dark is a shadow that too much throws. Sit with that one last time. The thing you were taught to read as the emptiest place in the universe is the fullest, the most crowded, the most concentrated, the most complete gathering of matter that exists anywhere. And it looks like nothing to your eye only because it is so full that the light cannot get out. The darkest thing is the fullest thing. That is the answer. Now let me bring it all the way home to something small, because that is where these walks should end. Not in the cosmos. Here, with you. The next time you are somewhere the sky is truly dark, go outside. Let your eyes adjust slowly, the way they need to, and find a patch of black between the stars. Any patch. Rest your eyes on it, the way you did at the beginning of this walk, before you knew any of what you know now. It will look like nothing. It will look empty. Your eye will tell you, the way it always has, that there is nothing there. And you will know better. You will know that the dark is not always empty. You will know that somewhere in it, sealed and silent, there are places fuller than anything your eye has ever seen. You will know that the darkest points are not the emptiest, that they are the most crowded, that the black can be the color of too much, not too little. Hold that patch of dark. Just hold it. It is not nothing. It never was. Look a little longer. Let the old idea go. The dark is not empty. The dark is full. And now, wherever you are, whatever the hour, let your eyes close if they want to. Rest easy. The dark is full, and you are held by the same gentle gravity that holds the stars. And there is nothing to fear in a sky that is fuller than it looks. Sleep well.